Beloved Heartmaster, we watch you on computer transmission in Pacific Harbor, and I can tell you it's wonderful to actually be here in the room, sitting so close to you in your heart radiance. Beloved, you have been at work on your source text, the Basket of Tolerance, the great tradition of religion and spirituality. And in particular, two individuals, the kind of twin icons of the West, Jesus and Shakespeare. And I have a question that I would like to ask you about your appearance in the Western domain. And I have a brief reading from your Dawnhorse Testament. I am the first and the only one necessary to work by means of avataric birth and divine self-submission in the domain of Western culture. But I have come here to Earth, to mankind, and into the total cosmic domain for the sake of all beings. I have come here to complete the divine self-revelation of the divine way that ultimately most perfectly realizes real God and truth and reality, so that even all in all may be translated into my spiritually bright self-domain. In order that the field or world circumstance of divine self-revelation would become complete, it was necessary for me to appear in the domain of heretofore avatarically unvisited and mostly secular Western culture, but I have come for the sake of all beings. Da. Beloved, the origin of Western culture is generally held to be the 5th century in Greece, or the classical Greek period. And I want to explore many of the correspondences in your life and your teaching that appear to indicate this period. Your sacred name, Eleutherios, is Greek. You've given your sacred name to one of your sacred texts, Eleutherios. There is Temple Eleutherios. You use the Greek myth Narcissus. You point to the principal character of Greek drama, Oedipus, in our Oedipal consideration. The first chapters of the Mummery appear to be indicating a birth of your presence, because this area was called Attica, and all things classically Greek are called Attic. Perfect metaphor for that time and place would be the attic room. And there's a kind of genesis of can be seen as your appearance growing in the Western world in those first 3 chapters. And then, of course, your use of argument, which the Greeks invented. Socrates invented argument. I remember once someone quoted to you a saying attributed to Socrates that the unexamined life is not worth living. And you responded, the unlived life is not worth examining. And there are other individuals of significance in this early and formative period. Socrates, the disciple Plato, his student Aristotle, the great dramatists Aeschylus, Euripides, Aristophanes, Sophocles. And you've spoken of Shakespeare and perhaps others like him as gifts from the divine. And you've spoken of them as secular saints and geniuses. And I want to ask you, were you active in this period, in some way manifest, either as individuals or as the force of birth in this period of time itself, as to serve your great divine and complete seven-stage manifestation in this time and place? Thank you, beloved.
It's possible to speak of the deeper personality vehicles associated with this avataric birth, and I've done so. And it would be possible to carry those associations back through historical time, as it might be described or presumed to have been, including various personalities who are known by tradition somehow. It is also to speak of me just as I am, prior to any vehicles whatsoever. In which case, all is always arising in me, participating in me, coincident with me, in some sense that is not otherwise something you could call historical in terms of my own person. Also, to speak of the so-called classic Greek period, more or less 5th century before the Common Era. As the root of Western civilization is a convention of learning, a convention of education. For a long time, people in the West hardly even knew of the existence of people from that period, or the writings. They had been lost, and it happened that they were preserved in the libraries of Muslims, and crossed over to European Christian culture. In the medieval and Renaissance procedures. And so the classic education became fundamental to Western education, as in particular the Renaissance transformation occurred, in which the transition from the sacred orientation of culture to, or culture oriented to the divine, was replaced by a more and more secularized culture, in which the culture is oriented to man, or mankind, more and more in and of itself, as itself alone, and its own mind, without recourse to any divine reference of any kind for some thinkers. But you also have to remember that Western civilization is founded in the Judeo-Christian, so-called Judeo-Christian, or the civilization inherited through Judaism and earliest Christianity, and the traditions of Judaism at least refer back to a period considerably long time before the 5th century in Greece. One of the reasons it is presumed to be such a dominant part of the Western orientation is because it justifies modernism